Hello, friends. Ted Wilcox here again to bring you into another thrilling chapter in our continuing saga of magic, mystery, and the American century. But before we begin, here's Charlie Pulcher with a brief review of our last episode.
Last time, aching from nightmares and a near-fatal ambush, Mickey investigated Joshua Norton Park, the site of Hallie Baptiste's abduction, 8 days cold and trampled by time. The ground offered little more than mud, trash, and bad memories, until Bullet found exactly what she needed. Tire marks, fresh enough to collect for testing, and more, a strange scent drifting west through the Tenderloin, leading from the park into a forgotten alley carved into makeshift rooms of piled garbage. Alone and exhausted, Mickey stepped into the filth to see what was hiding there. Is she about to uncover the truth or walk headlong into a trap? We'll find out now.
This is the Mythic Chronicles. Entry 1, Crime Wave.
Chapter 19. Mickey finds something in the trash. October 25th, 1951. Piles of trash formed a narrow valley, forcing Mickey to watch her step as she navigated around bottles, shattered glass, and other hazards. The stench only worsened as she moved deeper into the alley, and no matter how much she scrunched her nose, she couldn't quite stop her eyes from watering. Which was why she was caught off guard when, mid-hop while sidestepping a glass pipe, the nearest pile rustled, and she nearly tripped over the pipe she'd just avoided as she jumped back. "Hello?" she called, surprise overriding dignity and making her voice quaver, even as her fingers found the grip of her gun. In response, the pile went still, giving the non-animal instinct part of her brain enough time to regain control. Realizing the pile wasn't becoming some kind of trash monster forming to tear her apart for spare parts, she blinked and, feeling ridiculous, how do you do? Nobody's here," snapped a voice from within the pile. It sounded harsh and jagged, as if the speaker had spent a decade gargling gravel and chasing it with cigarettes. Unable to help herself, Mickey smirked. "All right, nobody. I'm Polyphemus the Cyclops, and I've come for revenge." The pile shuddered, somehow managing to convey confusion. Mickey rolled her eyes, letting go of her gun. "Nice one, Mick. How many trash heaps do you think have actually read Homer?" Out loud, she said, "My name's Michelle. I'm looking for the girl taken from the park 8 days ago. Someone called the cops. Know anything about that?" The heap lay still long enough for Mickey to consider taking a smoke break. But before she could act on the thought, it began to shimmy, causing the outermost debris to fall away and reveal a tiny, ragged, and very dirty halfling. The little mythic had blotchy skin that shimmered like fish scales, greasy hair that obscured most of its face, and was so grubby, Mickey couldn't tell if it was male or female. "I know she isn't here," it muttered, blinking mismatched eyes, one icy blue, the other nearly black, before burrowing back into its pile. "Wait a second, would you?" Mickey urged. "I'm trying to help." "Don't you want to help too?" The halfling paused, then shook its head. "No! Go away!" Mickey sighed and reached into her purse. She nearly jumped out of the alley when the halfling shrieked and burst into a cloud of dust. Mickey blinked and flinched again as the halfling, still screaming, reappeared farther down the alley. The movement had been so sudden and she so startled, it took her a moment to understand what had happened. The little thing hadn't exploded. It had teleported. The dust was just the grime shaken loose as it vanished. The halfling looked as confused as she felt when it realized it had gone deeper into the alley instead of outside it. Then, with another scream, it scrambled farther into the trash-littered corridor, knocking over piles in its frantic retreat. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Mickey called, raising her empty hands. "Easy there." Realizing it had boxed itself in, the halfling whipped its head around before diving into another heap of garbage. "Leave me alone," it wailed, dissolving into unintelligible mutters. Mickey winced. I ought to be pistol-whipped for being this stupid, she thought, as she slowly pulled out the depressingly small roll of cash and placed it on the ground. I'm not here to hurt you, she said gently. I'm a friend. The halfling's head rose, eyes darting between Mickey and the money, fear and need warring in its gaze. People always say they don't want to hurt me, they mumbled, eyes flicking everywhere but at Mickey. But they always do. Please, just go away. Mickey shook her head. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm just— Go away! The halfling screamed, loud enough to sting Mickey's ears. Mickey winced, but kept her voice calm. Trying to help the missing girl, she continued. But to do that, I need help first. Can you help? The halfling flinched, as if Mickey's words carried a painful weight. We'll see, came a whispered reply after a steadying breath. Slowly, eyes rose to meet Mickey's gaze. It felt like being examined under a microscope, laid bare in a crowded room, every scar and flaw exposed. Mickey fought the urge to fidget under the halfling's scrutiny. The halfling's gaze flicked past Mickey's shoulder, and a sharp breath followed. Oh, they murmured, voice thick with sympathy. Oh, poor dear thing. You're sure? Mickey wasn't sure of anything, but fear was fading from the halfling's eyes. No reason to question it. Not just people, are you? Whispered the halfling. Can see it. They sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. Can smell it. You're something else. Could be dark, could be not. Hard to say. Something unreadable passed behind those eyes. Then, with a decisive nod, the halfling squared tiny shoulders, cleared their throat with a prim little cough, and, ignoring the cash, lifted a regal chin. With an imperious tone, the halfling declared, My name is Greta Rose Petunia Abigail Joshua Norton II, and a half, granddaughter of Joshua Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Steward of these lands. Mickey blinked. The shift was so abrupt it practically gave her whiplash. Even Greta's voice had changed. Gone was the gravelly rasp, replaced by something softer, more refined. With a bemused smile, Mickey gave a bow she hoped would pass inspection. Your Highness, she said. Apologies. Had I known, I would have— Greta's smile softened decades from her face, and she offered Mickey a magnanimous nod. That's quite all right, she sniffed. I learned long ago not to let others' faults bother me. We're all flawed, after all. She arched a filthy eyebrow at Mickey. Some more than others. Mickey swallowed a grin and bowed again. Your Highness, she repeated. I humbly request your guidance. A villain has murdered one of your subjects and taken another against their will. I have been charged with finding the victim and bringing the perpetrators to justice. Do you have any counsel that might illuminate this mystery? Greta's regal composure wavered. Her hands rubbed together in quick, nervous motions, like a grooming field mouse, her eyes darting before she leaned forward conspiratorially. I'm afraid to speak of it, she whispered. Mickey's pulse quickened, but she kept her movements slow as she crouched to meet Greta's wide eyes. I swear, by my life and all my power, no villain shall hear where I learned this. Greta tilted her head. You mean it? Mickey nodded. I just want to understand what you saw. Then I'll leave and never return. Greta's shoulder slumped. Never? Well, Mickey hesitated. Unless you'd like me to come back. Greta giggled, then collected herself, clearing her throat and straightening. I'd like that very much, she said loftily. Yes, I'm the one who called the police that night. Mickey kept her expression neutral. Can you tell me what you saw, Highness? Greta took a deep breath and nodded. Her gaze turned distant, remembering. The weather was so nice. I decided to sleep under the stars, she began. Grandfather's park is small, but on clear nights, you can see them twinkle like diamonds. I enjoy a few, libations while I stargaze. Mickey's gaze flicked to the empty bottles and pipe. But Greta continued unaware, caught up in the memory of her story. I was celebrating because I'd earned enough for a dose of spice. She blinked once, and her eyes refocused as they flicked back to Mickey. Do you know Spice? Mickey nodded. The street name for bliss, spice gave off a distinctive cinnamon and nutmeg scent when burned. It's a wondrous thing, Spice, Greta said. Clears your mind, lets you taste beyond tasting, feel beyond feeling, see beyond seeing. Oh, the things I've witnessed. Her gaze drifted into the middle distance, lost in wistful memory. Even a highborn like myself tires of reality, she murmured. And Spice takes you away. Her eyes burned as she stared at Mickey. You don't happen to have any spice, do you? Mickey could see the desperation in her eyes. It was like staring into the hollows of her soul. But she shook her head. I'm sorry. A pity, Greta murmured, eyes flicking toward the roll of cash. A little taste would be lovely right now. Mickey cleared her throat noisily. Greta flinched, looking up with the guilty expression of a child caught reaching for the cookie jar. It sounds like that night was quite pleasing, Mickey said, steering the conversation back on track. Greta's dirt-smudged face darkened. Until it wasn't, she muttered. Mickey stayed quiet, letting her continue. 1 second, I was alone, watching the heavens glow and dance. The next, he was there, standing over me. Greta's mismatched eyes grew distant as she considered her next words. He was tall, with coal-black skin, wearing one of those fancy tuxedos with tails, like grandfather used to wear. A top hat, a cane, and the strangest thing, cotton balls stuffed in his nostrils, like a corpse prepared for burial. I know what you're thinking, and you'd be right. Normally, someone like that would be scary, and I'd blink away faster than you could say Jack Robinson. Mickey raised an eyebrow. Blink? She asked. That disappearing trick you just did? A faint smile touched the halfling's lips. I may have used a little too much earlier, and, got a bit turned around. Anyway, this man was quiet. Really quiet. Never said a word. Yet I understood, as surely as water is wet, that he meant no harm. That we were friends. Her smile faded. So when he smiled, put a finger to his lips, and beckoned me to follow, I did. We walked from my spot to a new hiding place, one I didn't even know existed. And I've spent more time in Grandfather's Park than anyone alive. This spot was perfect. Deep in shadows, but clear view of the park. So hidden, I still can't find it. She shook her head, frustration flickering across her face, as if the memory was just beyond reach. But once we got there, something changed. The man, my friend, became completely still, like a statue. Didn't breathe, didn't blink. And he wasn't smiling anymore, just staring into the park. She shivered. Then, before I could ask what we were waiting for, a young couple, a man and woman, ran into the clearing. This wasn't the kind of running people choose. They were scared. Really scared. The man kept looking over his shoulder, yelling at the woman to move faster. Her breath turned unsteady. That's when I heard them. The hunters. Loud, rattling things, getting closer and closer. Then they burst through the trees, 2 of them on motorcycles. They circled the couple, forcing them to stop. The man stood between the woman and the hunters, shouting for them to back off. Greta's breath hitched. But they didn't. Tears welled in her mismatched eyes. The man protecting the girl, he changed. He became some sort of beast, a mix of cat and man. He threatened the hunters with claws and fangs, but they just laughed. She squeezed her eyes shut, body trembling. Take your time, Mickey said. Greta nodded, swallowing thickly. When she spoke again, her voice was little more than a whisper. The bigger hunter changed too. He swelled, shifted, like a massive toad, but with fangs and claws. If the Catman was a monster, the hunter was an abomination. She shuddered. The Catman fought, hard, But he didn't last long. The thing let him scratch and bite, like it wanted him to. Then it grabbed him. Her hands clenched as if wringing something apart. With one twist, he fell. Greta's voice cracked, her breath coming in shaky starts and stops. But the toad thing wasn't done. It ate. Mickey swallowed the bile rising in her throat. What happened to the woman? Greta wiped her nose on a grimy sleeve. While that was happening, the other hunter went after her. She tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. He grabbed her, threw her onto his motorcycle, and called for his partner. The abomination changed back, and they rode away. She looked at Mickey, terror etched into her features. Then I was alone. I looked around, but my friend was gone. Only 2 nickels left where he'd been standing. Her voice wavered. I used them to call the police. I didn't want trouble, so I left for a while. Which is why they couldn't find you, Mickey murmured, nodding. Did the hunters have any distinguishing marks? Something you'd recognize? Greta scrunched her face in concentration. The bigger one had slicked back hair and a short beard. The other wasn't as big and had short hair, like soldiers from the war. They wore matching leather vests with some kind of design. Did you see the design? Greta furrowed her brow, then shook her head. I don't know. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked with frustration. She looked up at Mickey, pleading. I realize it sounds crazy. The person on the phone said so, but it happened. It was real. You have to believe me. Mickey nodded. I believe you, Your Highness. And she did. Mostly. Whatever Greta had seen, her fear was real, and her story aligned with the motorcycle theory. Mickey would have to confirm with Rosie if the bikers were the demon lords. The other part? A tuxedo-wearing dead man with cotton balls shoved up his nose, appearing from nowhere, and leading someone to a hidden vantage point for a crime that hadn't yet occurred. She racked her brain for any lore matching that description. And while she'd be the first to admit the world held more secrets than she could ever hope to understand, nothing fit. She had a hunch the halfling's heavy drug use may be magnifying the horror. Then a warbling howl pierced the fog, and Mickey stiffened. A coyote? This deep in the city? The dream from after she'd been shot at the motel flashed through her mind. The native man standing over a vast hilly plain, his face streaked in war paint. His eyes, green and gold, piercing, familiar. She'd dismissed it at the time, convinced it was a trick of her shocked mind, a scrambled hallucination from being shot. But those eyes, she'd seen them before. The same eyes as the coyote outside Bayshore Grocery and Spirits. Her breath caught. Her thoughts snapped back to Greta's story. A man in a tuxedo, appearing from thin air, wielding powers no mortal should have. Unless, of course, you weren't immortal. Because you were a god. A shiver crawled up her spine. Coyote. Another howl drifted through the fog, echoing down the alley like triumphant laughter. A weight settled in her gut. What in all the hells could draw Coyote, the Coyote, and a mysterious corpse man to a case like this? A faint breeze ghosted across the back of her neck. Boss, Bullet whispered, you should see this. Mickey nodded, refocusing on Greta. Tale told, the halfling had shrunk into her trash heap like a punctured wineskin. Thank you, Your Highness, Mickey said, standing. This is exactly what I needed. Greta laid her head against the trash like a pillow. I'm glad, she murmured. I like helping. Mickey smiled. Get some rest. You've earned it. I'll come back to visit after I take care of the monsters who did this. Greta's lips twitched, but her smile didn't touch her doubt-filled eyes. Luck, she whispered. Mickey bowed once more before heading out of the alley. As she neared the entrance, Bullet's breeze returned, but this time he said nothing. By the time she stepped onto the street, the fog had thinned. The sun, diffused behind mist, looked more like the moon burning through the marine layer. What is it? She asked. Something. Bullet made a thoughtful sound, finally settling on dangerous. Mickey froze. Was that fear in Bullet's voice? I'm gonna need specifics, she said, keeping her tone light despite the tightening knot in her stomach. It's hard to say, boss, Bullet admitted. But something dangerous passed through while you were talking to the seer. Mickey bit her lip. It could be nothing. But dangerous usually meant monsters, and monsters meant victims. Might as well have a look, she exhaled. Which way? A faint breeze stirred her hair, pointing back the way she'd come, toward the park. Of course, Mickey muttered, tugging up her bomber jacket zipper. Well, she sighed. At least it's closer to where we parked.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Chronicles. The story continues every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast. Your words might help bring more mythics into the fold. To listen ahead, unlock bonus content, and gain access to VIP Discord roles and behind-the-scenes updates, check out our Patreon, or visit us at SeanTLaffertyBooks.com. I'm Sean. Thanks again for being here.